If not, I will move on. Okay, final thoughts. So a key takeaway from today is that the cars section is not based on your previous knowledge, but rather your ability to think and reason about the information you're given. Again, you could theoretically walk into cars not knowing anything about biophysics, chemistry, philosophy, psychology, whatever, and still score a 132, a perfect score, right? As long as you can think and reason the way the MCAT wants you to. The answers to each of the questions are given to you in the passage. You simply need to learn how to find them. This is not exactly true because sometimes you do have to make inferences and reach conclusions that are not specifically stated, but you should be able to make those inferences and conclusions based on the information in the passage. You shouldn't be relying on outside information. So in that sense, it is true. The best way to learn to reason and think the way the MCAT wants you to do is to practice. Struggle with cars, keep practicing, and make sure when you practice, keep the things I mentioned in mind. Also, be thinking about the important question: why is he writing this? What is he trying to apply? What does it logically mean? All of these things you should be thinking about while you're reading, right? Not just after when you come to a question. Like, especially the why is he writing this? What is he trying to imply with this? You should be thinking that while you're reading. That will help you just understand the passage better, right? If you understand paragraph 1 or why he's writing paragraph 1, you'll have an easier time understanding paragraph 2. If you don't really understand what paragraph 1 is about, reading paragraph 2 is just going to compound the confusion and just going to make it hard for you to understand what's going on at all, right? So as you're reading, try and understand what's actually happening, what's being said, why is it being said. Okay. And do this both when you're reading the passage and when you're reading the answer choices for each question, especially for the strength and weaken questions. For the strength and weaken questions, if they ask you about details, think for each answer choice, if this was true, what would this mean for the passage? How does this relate to the passage? Would this support the argument? Would it not support it? So you have to be thinking about it when you're reading answers as well. There's not one, and it's not written here, but there's not just one way to approach cars. People have different strategies. I tend to read the passage first to get a general idea and then go read the question and go back to the passage. Some people I know like reading the questions first to get a sense of what they're actually looking for in the passage and then read the passage. Find your own way. Try out different ways if you're struggling. If one way is not working for you, try out different ways. Maybe they work better, maybe they don't. Find the way that works best for you. Again, the only way to do that is if you do more passages, more practice. Okay. When you're practicing, make sure when you are reviewing something that you got wrong, make sure you understand what part of the process you're not getting. So, for example, if you got a question wrong, did you get the question wrong because you didn't understand what the main idea of the passage was, and then you just couldn't work from there, right? If it was an inference question that required you to know the main idea, did you struggle in figuring out the main ideas in the first place, and that's why you couldn't infer from that? Or did you correctly guess the main idea, but then you didn't make the right inference, right? And that's where you struggled. So, and then from there, you can work on whatever it is you're struggling with, whichever step of the process, essentially, right? So when you're reviewing, exactly see what types of questions you're getting wrong. Are they strength and weaken, inference, main idea, whatever, and what part of the process is problematic for you, right? And then try and specifically work on that, find tips. Feel free to come to office hours and ask me tips on specific steps, or not just me, Janelle, or any of the other tutors as well. But feel free to ask us, or feel free to go online, to email us, to ask in the group me for maybe some of the other students have any suggestions, all of that. Any other questions? So the main idea is, so this is what I was getting at. The main idea is not in a paragraph. The main idea is in every paragraph. That's why it's the main idea. Hints of the main idea should be in all of the paragraphs, and then you have to combine them into one main idea. the main idea of paragraph 1 is just the idea that's present in that one paragraph, and it relates the main idea of the passage, right? So yes, there are a lot of things to consider with main idea. You mentioned tone. That is definitely tone, and language is definitely one thing that you want to talk about. Is it when they're talking about a topic, are they talking about it with like good tone, good language, positive language? Whereas another topic they're talking about like negative language and negative tone. Well, then it's probably they're comparing and they like one over the other, right? Focus on what they're talking the most about, which subject. So for example, in contractarian utilitarianism, they did talk about utilitarianism, but they didn't talk about it the most. They talked the most about just contractarianism. So focus on that. Same thing with like, and I've seen this, people get tripped up with this. If they talk about a person, say like a political figure or something, and then they talk about his ideas or one of his ideas or one of his theories or one of his policies or something like that, are they specifically focusing more on the political figure or on the person himself? Or are they focusing more on his idea or his policy or that one specific thing he did? Which is the main idea? Which do they talk more about? Because obviously they have to talk about both. They can't just introduce an idea without giving the name of the person who gave the idea. But do they talk more about the idea than they do about the person, or do they talk about more about the person, and this was just one of the things he did? Think about that.